there, wonderful humans. Welcome back to another episode of Designer Debut here on Board Game Dads, the show where we focus on some first time designers who are just getting their games out into the spotlight. I am joined today by the multi talented Charlie McCarron. Charlie, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Anthony.
No problem. I saw your game and I was immediately intrigued. And I have to say up front, I love this about the gaming hobby in general, right? When I learn something from a game that I did not know before, that's awesome. Right? And I'm talking like, it could be to the extent of there's a lot of like nature themed games that throw some real facts and information at you that you can kind of learn during the game, but sometimes it's just a subject that I know nothing about. And your game, entitled Four Humours, I had never heard of this concept before, and it really it immediately piqued my interest. And I felt the way I felt when I first heard about the game Three Sisters, the roll and
Mm.
write game from Motor City Games, where I had no idea what that was about. Looked into it, and it was a gardening technique, and lo and behold, I learned something new.
Oh,
So
okay. I
I'd
don't know
love to
that
hear.
one. I
Yeah,
got to
that's
look that up now.
there you go. Well, I'll let you
Mhm.
discover the magic. I'm not going to ruin
Okay.
it for you, but it has nothing to do with family members. I'll tell you that much.
Okay.
But your game is titled Four Humors, and it's a very interesting concept that I'd love to hear how you kind of gravitated towards this and what made you kind of like land on this as the idea for the theme of the game.
Sure. Yeah, I think it goes back to 10th grade English class, learning about the humors and this concept that is from originally the Greeks, but it really became popular in medieval times,
Hmm.
and people started to think of how the body's fluids would influence your personality. So they thought if you had too much yellow bile in you, that would make you choleric and aggressive and want to lead and or stab people. And then yeah, there's all sorts of too much blood would make you more creative and extroverted. Too much black bile makes you melancholic, introverted, and thinky. And too much phlegm makes you very lazy and just kind of go with the flow personality. So I just thought this was such a rich field for making a game out of it.
Yeah.
And I I've probably had this theme idea for like 7 or 8 years,
Oh wow. Okay.
doing different probably around 7 totally different games until I got to this current one, Four Humors.
Interesting.
And
Okay.
yeah, which has also
So
taken several years to make, but
yeah.
um, yeah, it's
So were there other so obviously you initially had some other like mechanics in mind. Was your first idea when once the theme was settled, your first idea of like the mechanics of the game, did you base that off of just mechanics that you typically enjoy in board games, or did you design it with, like players in mind? Like, what was the mindset on choosing things? And
uh,
then, consequently, how did you make those jumps to all those iterations?
oh sure. I think actually, the creative process just kind of flows from one thing to the other. And I originally had this game idea about a pharmacy, some sort of pharmacy, like making dice capsules or something like that. And in that process, the game didn't really work that well, but uh, I started brainstorming names for the game, and I
Mm.
came up with like a medieval pharmacy. What would that be like? And then that's what made me think back to the Four Humors idea. And so I really tried to hit that theme first and figure out what the mechanics would be. And it took a while, like I said, many different types of games. And finally, I just got to this simple idea of like, what would a little scene be like with, um, I'll show you one of the cards from the game, with little citizens, and you're placing tokens on them, and each of the citizens has two possible personalities that they
Okay.
could be. So once I had that concept with the art, uh, for some reason the flow of it just worked, kind of an overnight idea. Um, then it
Yeah,
took a lot.
that's a great feeling when it finally starts to snowball and things just kind of like fall into place, and it feels like that's the way it was supposed to be the whole time.
Yeah. Yep.
That's great. So, in terms of we know how you settled on the theme. In terms of the artwork, was there, a specific type of art style that you had in mind, or were you kind of open to artist's interpretation of what you had in mind for the theme?
I always kind of wanted it to be a flat medieval style, but I also kind of had I wanted the feeling of Where's Waldo.
Okay.
So like, you know, tiny scenes with a lot going on in them. So yeah,
Sure.
you can see even on the box cover, there's just a lot of little Easter eggs everywhere throughout the whole game. So when I got the game signed by Adam of Adam's Apple Games,
Hmm.
he could see that I was really into the art side, and he actually offered to have me do the art direction, which is kind of rare for
Oh,
the
wow.
game
Okay.
designer to also be art director.
Sure.
But I thought that would be super fun. And so I ended up doing sketches for our illustrator, who's super talented, Shirley Gong. She's lives in China, and she is, yeah, just awesome at hitting this kind of flat medieval look, but also really fun and cute art.
Yeah, the cover looks like this person is posing for like a deck of cards.
Yep. Yeah.
That's
Uh,
cool.
yeah.
That's awesome. And the colors, obviously the theme lent itself to what colors you were going to be using because of the way that the body thing was set up. So that's pretty cool. So can you walk me through like what a turn would look like while
Yeah.
playing the game?
Yeah. So when I hit on this idea, I just love that it was pretty simple what you do on your turn. You have a hand of little humor tokens that are potions that you put on the people secretly.
Okay.
So this knight, for example, could be choleric, the aggressive kind, or phlegmatic, the kind of go with the flow personality. And so if I do that, I'm deciding if I want to kind of attack the rest of this card, you could
Mm,
say, or just go with the flow and hope that no one else is aggressive, or there's a hierarchy of how this card's going to play out,
okay.
but we're placing our tokens down and maybe doing a little bit of bluffing each other or trying to negotiate, make friends, but you don't know what's going to happen till the tokens get flipped over.
Okay.
And the other factor is there's actually four cards out at once. So it's really tough decision to decide, okay, where do I want to invest my tokens? And then by winning the throne, for example, you would get to put your token on the throne on the map, and then you're making, connections on the map for completing objectives, which is the main goal
Okay. That's
of
the
like,
main way to get points.
yep, yeah. So, but yeah, like I said, the turn is simple in that you're placing one token down, but there's like a lot to strategize about where that token should go.
So how many of those cards are out on the table then that you're choosing to place on?
So four cards out, unless it's higher player count, then we have five out.
Okay.
Um, and there's all sorts of, so each card has like a little different scenario. So here's the royal latrine. It's all peasants, so there's no aggressive types there. You're
Gotcha.
either really friendly and working together, or you're just kind of like, you could be a loner with the phlegmatic.
Got it.
So there's also a ton of Monty Python references,
Awesome.
like the bridge. Um, and as a composer, also, I was like, well, we have to throw in wherever there's the bard characters. I actually wrote some music on those cards.
Awesome. That's so
So
cool.
that's
Yeah, that's definitely something else I wanted to ask you about. I like to brag here on the channel about firsts that we accomplish and milestones and things like that. So you're the first professional musician that I've had on the channel. I'm
cool.
going to assume that you've been into music a little bit longer than board game design.
I have, yeah. I mean, ever since like orchestra in fifth grade, I wanted to write music, and I so I went to college for music,
Hmm.
and then I've been doing my own songwriting and writing for orchestras and electronic music. And what one of my main gigs is making film scores.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, that's but as um, kind of a trend in my life is I love doing something as a hobby, and then it kind of becomes my job.
Right.
And then I need another hobby, so board
Yeah.
games. But now that's kind of become my job too. So I don't know
Yeah.
what my next hobby is going to be. But
Well, I hope the board game thing lasts a long time for you. So, what instrument did you play at first when you first started in like elementary school?
oh yeah, piano at first, plunking out stuff on my parents'
Hmm.
piano, and then violin. Um, and then, of course, you want to be cool and play guitar in junior high.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, yeah. Do you play music at all?
I don't really play music. I do have a keyboard that is in a box at this point. It hasn't been out in a long time, but I do love music. I have a musical sense. I do. Again, it's been a very long time, but I dabbled very little on the drums, very little.
Hey.
There was a time in our lives where a buddy of mine, the company that he worked for, had in their company every year they did a battle of the bands where they had like a music school come in, like a school of rock, and everyone broke them into bands and they practiced every day and they had a competition. And as part of that, they had access to a music room in this building in New York City. And every once in a while we would go there, just my buddy and a couple of us, and just hang out in this studio, and it was the coolest thing ever. Like, it was just a room full of instruments, and
Mm.
it was like just very liberating, right? Because there was no judgment. It was just us, and it was like whatever, mess it up, who
Mhm.
cares? Just do it again. Like, it was,
Yeah.
we weren't laying down tracks or recording anything. It was just kind of us messing around. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I love music, and
Yeah.
there's similar to board games. There's a lot of connections that get made in the brain,
Yeah.
neurologically, with memories and things like that from songs,
Yeah.
and definitely some gaming experiences as
Yeah.
well. So I've got an
And
interesting question here from Eric. He's asking, oh, is it not coming up? Let's see. Oh, here we go. What type of music would you recommend listening to while you
oh.
were playing your own game? Very meta question from Eric.
Yeah. Ooh. Well, we actually, if we had hit a certain tier in the Kickstarter, I would have actually composed the soundtrack for Four Humours,
Oh, cool.
but
Okay.
that would have taken quite a bit of production. So, and I'd have to find. I was thinking, well, maybe I'll find like traditional players of old school
Mhm.
instruments from that era. So off the top of my head, I'm not sure, but I think for starters, like the Monty Python and the Holy Grail songs
Sure.
would
You just have the
be
movie on in the
why
background if
not?
need
Yeah,
be. Yeah.
that'd be fun. Um,
And you're a
but
fan of like
some
ambient music as well, right? So there's a couple of websites I think that provide some interesting
yeah,
background soundtracks for different games.
yeah, I could. Someday I might try to make recordings of these little songs that I've done on the cards
Yeah.
because I think that would be fun. But I always kind of picture this one as like, he's writing. This is in Gutenberg Publishing. He's writing maybe for a harpsichord.
There
That's
you
what
go.
that one kind of is like.
Yes, Brave Sir Rabbit on
Right.
repeat.
Yes.
That'll get interesting after a
Oh
while.
yeah. Also, yeah, I forget about all these cards we have, but there is. Where is it? If I can find it. Oh yeah, this is basically our Brave Sir Robin card.
Nice. There you
The
go.
quest for the
Perfect.
Grail, and they've got their little coconut shell
Yep.
and
That's great.
some sort of recorder.
Yeah, I love it. The art really hits. I like it a lot. So were there board game inspirations for you that maybe not, I don't mean necessarily for humors, because I know you have other designs as well. What kind of hit for you in terms of when you made the decision to actually dive in and try to make a game?
Sure. I think actually I remember the first time I thought about it was a good friend of mine, actually the drummer in my old band, Rob. He had the idea to make a game kind of like Catan in space,
Mhm.
and just out of whatever styrofoam and pegboard he had. And we played it, and I was like, wow, that was pretty fun. I had no idea you wanted to make games, and you just did it. So that was a huge inspiration.
Huh.
Because, yeah, I think at that time I was probably playing a lot of Catan.
Yeah.
and
We all went
may
through the Catan phase.
Yep, I actually just played that with my class yesterday.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So yeah, I'm teaching the intro to game design class
Man.
at University of Wisconsin Stout, and we're just going through all sorts of games. And right now they're getting inspiration for dice-based games. So
Oh, that's so cool. Now, was this something that they were looking for specifically, or did you kind of like pitch this as a course?
no, actually, they Stout has a whole game design major.
Oh wow.
It's primarily for video game designers,
Sure.
but for their intro class, they want someone who teaches them how to make paper prototypes and board games before they get too far down the coding path,
Okay.
because a lot of them are new to coding, so they got to
Right.
learn how to make things fun with just paper prototypes first.
Hmm.
So yeah, I just started there. It's actually a full-time position, um, doing multiple classes of
That's
intro to
awesome.
game design.
So you developed your own coursework then, like a syllabus and whatnot?
Yep.
How did
Uh,
you decide that?
yeah, I mean, I just kind of made a gigantic spreadsheet of all the topics I want to cover,
Okay.
and kind of learning from other professors who've taught the class before too. And yeah, it's super fun trying to plan this out and be like, okay, what are the key things. And my philosophy in general is that you just learn so much better by doing. So
Yeah.
I'm right away I was like, okay, we're gonna do a game design activity on day one. And since then they've done 3 different little projects in just a few weeks.
Wow, that's really cool. How
So
many students do you have?
total is I think 72.
Wow.
So yeah,
That's great. That's very
it's a
promising for
great
the future.
program. Yeah, yeah.
So, how did you go through the getting this game published? Like there's obviously a lot of different routes that people can take. Some people try to do it on their own, which is a little more arduous, I think. Did you, how much demoing or prototyping did you have to do before someone finally, paid attention to it?
Yeah. So this one, Four Humors, was actually a surprisingly easy one to get signed, because I went to Protospiel in
Hmm.
Minnesota with prototype testing, and it just so happened that I hit on this great idea overnight, and it was just working, and it was fun already. And so at that, I met Adam Rayberg of Adam's Apple Games, and it was kind of the last few hours on Sunday. And so we were both like, "Hey, you haven't tried my game yet. Do you want to
Hmm.
pop in?" And yeah, he we had a great session, and he was like, "Okay, let's talk more." And from there, yeah, he signed it.
That's cool. It's
It's
almost like a board game designer speed dating sort of situation.
sort of, well, actually, the funny thing is, yeah, that was just more casual because it's Protospiel,
Right.
and I guess Adam and I had interacted 1 or 2 times before,
Okay.
um, but other games that I've tried pitching, it's a lot harder. It feels a little lucky if you get that kind of
Yeah.
break. But I did go to Gen Con for the first time this summer, and I did actually do a speed dating event with um,
Oh, cool.
publishers, designers,
Okay.
yeah, speed networking.
Huh.
So who knows? Fingers crossed. I pitched like 5 different games in 5 minutes, and
Wow.
it was kind of crazy.
That's awesome. Do you mind telling us about a couple of your other designs that you have going on?
Sure. Yeah. I have a drawing game that I co-designed with my friend Pete Jensen, and that is called Drawbacks, and it's kind of this like really you get these drawing challenges like you have to have your eyes closed and you can only hold the pen in your bicep
Oh
and
boy.
draw something. So you end up with a very incomprehensible
Right.
drawing, and then everyone else has to try to guess what your drawing is. But instead of just saying out loud, "Oh, I think it's a cowboy or something," you draw what you think it is, and then everyone reveals.
Oh.
So you get this like really funny, uh, like Rorschach's
Yeah.
test of what people thought you were drawing. So that's called Drawbacks. Still looking for a publisher for that one. Uh, have a simple card game that's like 10 minutes to play called Prismatic, and that one might get out there at some point. But I really wanted to do just like a really quick card game with colors and numbers.
Mhm.
And I have another one called 18 Thumbs Up, which is in the Button Shy 18 card
Oh,
contest.
okay. That makes sense. Cool.
Yep. It's kind of a mix of wavelength and timeline.
All right.
So just yeah. And then another 18 card one. I've done a couple button shy contests lately.
Cool.
But the Sinking States of America is a flip and right game where you have you play as a different state each time, and you see how like your actions will possibly create more flooding from the climate change and
Wow.
disasters and stuff. And you have to keep scratching off like places that flooded in your state.
Yikes.
So maybe a little dark, but I meant
Well,
it to be funny.
but it's realistic. Unfortunately,
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah.
a little tongue in cheek there. And same thing
Yep.
with the Four Humors, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
you know,
I,
it's all in good fun.
yep.
How much playtesting did you do with Four Humors before it got to where it's at?
A lot. Yeah. That one took I probably played it 100 times
Wow.
by the time it was kickstarted. But actually the like I was saying, this idea of the characters on the cards and that whole resolution actually worked really well right away.
Okay.
But it was like everything around it that really took a long time to figure out. Like, what is the goal going to be after this, or
Right.
what's the
Right.
map going to look like? And tried so many different things. And Adam was great about just like, hey, we'll, like however big the map has to be, we'll just do it. And so it's a little bit of a table hog, but it's
Right.
got
Right.
all these really cool big cards and big map pieces. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
So, kind of on that note, we have a question here from Professor Wren. So, in your sort of interactions now that you've had, is there a mechanism or a theme that you feel like piques the interest of a publisher? I mean, are they looking for something? Obviously, they're looking for something different, right? But there are so many games at this point that it's almost impossible to come up with something that is completely unique.
Yeah.
So, what was the feedback like? What did you kind of notice?
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing, that colors and numbers card game that I've pitched called Prismatic, I thought that was going to be like the lowest in terms of interest level, because it
Hmm.
didn't. It's really themeless, and it's just cards and colors and numbers. But that got the most interest from publishers because I think right now, especially, they're looking for card games that are
Yep.
easy to ship,
Yep.
and also they can put whatever art on it they want.
Hmm.
You only technically need 3 pieces of art with that game plus a box cover.
Right.
But yeah, I think and that one, the fact that it was really just quick to learn, like I had the advantage at that speed pitching that all my games recently have been really quick to teach.
Right.
So I think I don't know, I feel like there's a trend of at least the publishers I'm pitching to that they're looking for easy get into it right away
Right.
games.
How quickly can we get this made into people's hands?
Yep.
For sure. Yeah. My buddy Chris, who has his own channel, the Tabletop Express, had David on last night, who designed, or his Kickstarter is starting in a week or so. It's by Grumpy Spider Games, and it's Pocketbook Adventures. It's a little book of basically just puzzles that you need only a pencil for. And
Mm.
again, he kind of mentioned the same thing. It's something that was much easier to get numbers on and estimates on and faith in, because it was just really basically a book, as opposed to a giant box or plastics and molds and dice and things like that. And it just kind of streamlines the process a little bit. So yeah, that makes sense. That's a good question. Thank you, Professor Wren,
Yeah.
for that question. So with the Kickstarter, we've talked to some people who've had success on Kickstarter, some people who've had not so great success. And was there something that was surprising for you? Was there something that was an unexpected kind of snafu, or did everything kind of go according to plan for the most part?
Well, on my end, I was kind of just Adam was nice about keeping me involved in the whole process, which is great. But yeah, our Kickstarter went well, and um, the only thing is, of course, it happened during the pandemic, like the
Hmm.
start of the pandemic. So then from there on out, Adams had to deal with a lot of setbacks with
Right.
manufacturing was on hold, shipping got super expensive, and so
Hmm.
I feel for him on that end for sure. But we're finally getting it delivered. I'm seeing like copies going out to Europe now. People have it in their hands, and
Excellent.
US should be just like within a week or two
Oh, that's great.
in
Well,
people's hands.
congratulations. And that's a great feeling.
Yeah, thanks.
For sure. So we're taking a look at this is, I'm assuming, from the Kickstarter page, this image here.
Hmm.
So the center six tiles is making up that map you were speaking of, and then you have the things on the side. So talk about a little bit about the parts of the map. How do you actually score points?
Sure. So I went with a system. I used to have a system that was like you get points for different places when you get them on the map.
Hmm.
So like the throne would be worth more points, but it felt just a little arbitrary. So I changed it to be an objective system where you're trying to get. Um, there's the four objectives up at the top. Some are like connect four in a row, and then you get to put an objective star on it,
Okay.
or it's kind of like the scythe system
Hmm.
where you have to get a certain number of goals to win the game. And the yeah, I just like that system rather than counting victory points, because I would have games and then it would take like sometimes up to 10 minutes to count your points, and
Yeah.
I don't ever want to go back to that style of design.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just like
Score pads. Yeah.
I like race games where there's a endpoint and
Hmm. Hmm.
we did it. So
In
yeah.
terms of stretch goals, is that something else that you know you're in on that conversation for the most part, or is that kind of a
Yeah.
publisher taking that at that point?
Yeah, I mean, Adam was open to ideas like me composing some music.
Right.
And the stretch goals we had were really fun because we were actually just adding more cards and special areas. So we actually added a whole other um, seventh map tile that was
Oh,
like the
okay.
C region. And we made a whole set of cards for that region. And then we also had the Revolt expansion, which is taking some of these cards and revising them so it would be like an alternate story. So like I don't have the revolt ones on me, but so like the royal bedchamber,
Hmm.
for example, is the nobles, but in our revolt version, it turns into four peasants having a pillow fight on the bed. So they took over. Um, so it's just like, and you can just swap out whichever ones you want to use.
That's cool. Like the
Uh,
Trading Places expansion.
mm,
That's
yep,
interesting.
yep,
Cool. You probably don't have as much time as you used to actually play games, but I'd love to know what games get to the table for you. What are some of your favorites?
yeah. I still try to get to my Tuesday game group. Those guys and I have been playing for many years now,
Oh, great.
and Honestly, that was kind of my inspiration originally to really get into game design, because I just started seeing they buy all the new games, and so I was getting exposed to tons of cool ones. But recently, probably um, favorite one is The Crew. We played a ton over the pandemic
I'm
on
sure.
Tabletop
Yeah.
Simulator, and I just love that if you haven't played, it's like a cooperative trick taking game,
Hmm.
and you do all these missions, and we went through all 50 missions in the base game, and just loved it. So other than that, I don't know. I have tended to get more into just lighter party games lately, honestly. Like
Yeah.
So Clover and Just One.
Yep. Both excellent. I mean,
Yeah.
I just talked about So Clover in our last recording for the podcast, and just one, a game that you don't even really need to keep score if you don't want
Mm-hmm.
to, but still have a blast. I mean, that's going back to the publishers. That's what they want, right? That's something that is endless because those games are always going to get to the table,
Mm-hmm.
and they're going to get there quickly because they're so easy to teach, right?
Yeah.
And I mean,
Yeah.
just one you can play. We During the pandemic, we played that a few times remotely over Zoom with folks. Even if
Yeah.
they don't have the game, all they need is something to write with, and they can hold it up to the camera, and it just worked out really well.
Yeah.
So Kickstarter's over. What if someone wants to get their hands on Four Humours now? Is there any place they can order it? They have to wait for it to be all the way in stores.
Yeah. I believe there's a way to order it. But it will be in stores October 26th is the target date. The various stores around the area, but Adam would know a little better about where they can order it, but you could just go to adamsapplegames.com to
Cool.
get in touch with him.
Sounds good.
Uh,
And I'll try to remember to put that into the description here later on so you guys can check that out as well. All right. We are coming near the end, but before I let you go, it's become a bit of a tradition here on Designer Debut to end with a little bit of trivia, okay, for the guests, which is why I kind of asked you earlier about your musical taste a little bit. And I was kind of struggling on what to do. So this is a bit of a different concept, but I think you're going to enjoy it.
okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. So this game is called, well, I don't know if I really came up with a title or not, but basically it's, is this thing an indie folk band or a board game or both? So those are your three
Okay,
options
that's great.
for
I
each
like
of
it.
these questions, okay?
Oh
So,
boy.
don't ask me too many follow-ups about the answers to these because they're just, I'll suffice to say, I looked on BGG and I looked at some indie folk bands, and that's kind of where we came up with that.
Okay.
So,
Ooh, this is gonna be
all
interesting.
right, all right. So we're gonna start off with Rum and Pirates. So Rum and Pirates, board
Ooh.
game, band, or both?
I mean, my first instinct is it's a board game, but also would a board game named Rum and Pirates make it to publishing stage? I'm gonna go against my first instinct and say indie folk band.
It is a board
Is
game.
it? Oh, okay.
It is. I will tell you, in scouring BGG, especially when you start at the opposite end of the list, you will be shocked at some things that made it all the way to publication.
All right,
So,
I'm gonna look up Rum and
just
Pirates now. I'm sure it's amazing.
all right. Next up, Trampled by Turtles.
Oh, that's an indie band. They're from I want maybe Minnesota, where I'm from,
All right. Is
or
that your final
Wisconsin.
answer?
Yeah, that's for sure.
You
A
are correct. That is only a
band.
band and not a board game. Although it sounds like it could be a kid's game.
Yep.
Again, some of these you never know.
Yeah.
All right, I like the way this is going. All right, next up, Man Bites Dog.
I have that game.
Is
It's on my shelf right now. My brother got me that one. That's great. Yep.
it
But that
just
would
a
be a cool
game?
band too. Yeah, it's funny. It's like you're putting headlines together. So I don't know.
Well, here's a
It's
headline for you. It is also a band.
What? Oh, trick. Well, or I guess I got it right either way. But
It's both. Well, you can answer both. Both is a possible answer. So that one is the answer to that is both. So keep that in mind.
okay. Oh,
All
that's
right.
cool.
Next up, we have
How did you find
civil.
that?
Dude, I told you a lot of internet searching. A lot of internet searching, and yeah, and then that's where we're at.
Nice.
All right. Next up, we have something called Civil Wars. So is Civil Wars a band, a board game, or both?
I'm almost positive it's a band, the Civil Wars. Civil Wars plural. I mean, there's a million Civil War games, I'm sure, but I'm gonna say just a band.
You are correct, sir. It is just a band. I also will point out
Nice.
that during this process, there were many times when I was convinced that this could possibly not, there's no way that this thing could be a board game, and it was. Or the opposite, too. I was like, there's no way there's a band called this, and sure enough, there was.
Of course.
All right, next up.
I think that this should be a whole segment, like, or a whole game show.
It may
What is
become.
this? Yeah,
You never know. You never know. All right, next up, we've got Mountain Goats.
that's a band. And I don't know. I feel like maybe I'm gonna say also a board game.
You are correct. It is both.
All right.
It is both. It's a very cool board game, actually. It's a little tiny box. It's a King of the Hill type thing where if you get there's various mountains that are different values. You roll the dice, you make combinations, and you move your goat up. When you get to the top of each mountain, you'll get that many points. And if you keep rolling that number and you're at the top, you'll get those points every turn until someone else gets up there and knocks you back down to the bottom of the mountain. Very
Cool.
entertaining
I
game.
think I
It's
have
really
heard
good.
about that, but
Yeah.
yeah, haven't seen it.
All right.
So,
Next up, we have the Kings of Convenience. Kings of Convenience. Board game, band, or
ooh,
both?
I Kings of Convenience. I feel like maybe that sounds like a band. I'm gonna say just band.
You are correct. It is just a band. You got three
Okay.
in a row. You're on a hot streak.
All right.
All right. Next up, Industria.
Ooh, that sounds like both. I'm gonna say both.
It is not both, although I would have probably guessed both as well. It is just a game.
Okay.
Yeah.
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 I
But I felt
figured.
like, I mean, Industria sounds like a band name for sure. I
Yeah,
think.
like industrial. Like that's a genre, right?
Exactly. Exactly. All right. Next up, we have Heads of State.
Ooh, I think that's just a band. I'm gonna say just a band.
It is actually both.
Both?
It's actually
Oh, okay.
both. Yes. Yeah.
Nice.
I don't know
What?
anything about it, but yeah.
Mm.
All right. Couple more here. Next one is Mad Zeppelin.
Mad Zeppelin. That
Mad
sounds like
Zeppelin.
Led Zeppelin cover band, but I did when I was in high school. I was filming Zed Leplin, the band. But I think I'm gonna say Mad Zeppelin. I'll say just a board game.
Oh, it's actually both. It is a
It
cover
is.
band. Yes,
Oh
it
my
is a
god.
Led Zeppelin
Oh,
tribute
okay.
band,
Well, I should
and it
have
is a
gone
game.
with my instinct there.
All right, I got two more. Two more. Next up is Shaky Graves.
Ooh, that is. I think just a band.
It is just a band, but I could totally see it being a kid's game. I mean,
Yeah.
there's that game
It's
called
like
Shaky Manor, which you like move things around a little bit. So yeah, that's why I picked
that
that one.
sounds fun.
All right, last one, I promise. We have Swords and Bagpipes.
Ooh,
Game, band, or both? Swords and Bagpipes.
that sounds like a game I'd want to play, and I don't know if I'd want to listen to a band called Swords and Bagpipes, but maybe. Bagpipes are just so loud.
They are quite loud, yes.
But I'm gonna say I think maybe you're going out with both things, swords and bagpipes. or
It
no?
is sadly, it is only a game.
Only a game. Okay.
Yeah, and this was only a game as well, so don't feel too bad. But you got, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, you got about half of them right.
About
So
half.
there's that.
4 or 5. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
Well,
range.
that was really fun though.
That was
That's a
actually that was more fun than I thought it was going to be. Thanks for playing.
yeah, that's a great segment.
Well,
What
I
are
really
your
want to.
usual trivia?
So it depends. I try to tailor it, right? So you're only my fourth episode of this. Um, I had on Ambi Valdez for she didn't design a board game, but she actually wrote a children's book called Board Game Day, and that was on Kickstarter as well.
Cool.
So and she's a huge Disney fan. So I asked her a bunch of Disney like firsts, like what was the first Disney this, first Disney that,
Mm.
and then I had Dan Hughes on, who is from Huddersfield, UK, and I asked him some local Huddersfield facts that I found on the
Oh.
internet. And then the third person I had on was Ben Craven, who designed a game called Hydro Soakers, a little tactical skirmish thing about water guns. And it is the artwork is very much like 90s Nickelodeon cartoons, like way, way, way. So that was his set of trivia was all about 90s cartoons. So I didn't want to I didn't know if I'm going to sit here and ask you like composers and things like that. I didn't know how well that was going to go over. So when you
Mm.
said indie folk, I was like, there's probably some really weird band names out
Yeah.
there.
I like it.
I bet you we can cross reference a little bit. So
Hmm.
yeah, that's how that came about. But I do want to thank you, Charlie, for hanging out with us here for a while. I really do appreciate it. Folks, in case you missed it, the game is called Four Humours. It'll be available, hopefully, October 26th, and you can check out Adam's Apple Games for more information on where that might be. And you can check out the Kickstarter page, even though it's over, you can still look at the images and some information about the game there.
Yeah.
Charlie, anything else you want to add before we cut the cord here?
No, just thanks so much, Anthony, for having me on. It
You
was
are
really
very
fun.
welcome. Awesome.
Yeah.
We'll have you back on, and good luck with Four Humors. Good luck with the other games. Keep on pitching those publishers. And I want to thank everyone for tuning in. If you have any questions for Charlie and you didn't see this live, you can put them in the comments, and he'll be sure to come on and check and answer them for you. So there's that. All right, folks, that's all we have time for tonight. We will see you next time. Thanks to Charlie, and that's it. We'll see you. Bye. 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 Bye.